not just my ideal lifestyle, and how do we make it so that the firm still runs itself, still makes money when I go on vacation, shocking idea, but how do I help my staff be able to go on maternity leave or have a vacation where they can disconnect?
That was Brandon Rains, founder and owner of the Rains Law Firm in Denver, Colorado.
I know I have the loyalty of my staff.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean they'll never leave, right? But they know that I value them just as much as I value myself, right?
I'm Griffin Bridgers. My passion is education, and I create content dedicated to preserving institutional knowledge in estate planning for the next generation. In this video and podcast series, I bring you insights with the titans, innovators, and rising stars of the wealth transfer industries.
Hi, everybody. It's my pleasure today to introduce Brandon Rains. You may know Brandon, you may not, but Brandon is someone I'd call a dear friend and a very innovative attorney in a multitude of spaces, both on the client side and in the way he's approached building his own firm in terms of how it serves himself and his employees, the stakeholders in the firm. And really kind of the theme of our discussion today is to get a sense of Brandon's story, at least from the intentionality he's had in building his firm and how that ties into a broader question and theme of, if you're an attorney, dare you dream of some kind of ideal lifestyle that's outside of the system or the commonly accepted rules of what is expected out of most attorneys. So with that, thank you, Brandon, for joining us today. It's a pleasure to sit on this side of the interview seat and talk to you. So as a starting point, maybe you just give us the Cliff's Notes view of your background and what got you into your current position as owner of the Rains Law Firm.
Yeah, so quick, but still kind of comprehensive rundown. So I have a bachelor's and master's in history. When I was getting a master's, I found out that I was either had to be a genius or delusional to get a PhD and think I was going to get a tenure track position. So that fell by the wayside. Decided to go into law, really a very pragmatic decision. Like all of the other things that I felt like I could use my degrees for, honestly fell by the wayside. And it was the last thing left on the back burner. And I was like, well, I guess I'm going to law school. What got me into estate planning was a little bit before law school. And I was trying to decide, okay, I feel the need to have an idea of what I'm interested in. And just talking with some other attorneys that I knew and everything. It was around the same time when there was just this kind of run of celebrities who died without an estate plan, and just seeing, I mean, anyone who practices estate planning, or anyone who pays attention to the news, celebrities and dying without an estate plan is just, almost low-hanging fruit of things to talk about as reasons to say, hey, this is why you need an estate plan. And so, because it's family tragedies and family relationships, and Prince finding out, of course, after he died, that he had, a half sibling that he didn't know he had, and all this craziness, right? And so for me, just for religious and personal reasons, family is extremely important. And just viewing the breakdown of those family relationships was just such a tragedy to me. And I had identified estate planning as being uniquely positioned within the legal world as a way to try to prevent those family tragedies from happening. And so I was like, estate planning is where I want to go. And that's what I'm interested in doing. Later on, I found out that yes, estate planning is uniquely positioned to help prevent family tragedies. For me, the positive flip side of that is strengthening family relationships instead of just preventing family tragedy. Number one. Number two is, and we'll get on this, but this is a little bit of a soapbox of estate planning is uniquely positioned to strengthen family relationships, but at the same time, estate planning traditional transactional estate planning falls so short of that potential. And Griffin, you and I have talked a lot about that today or before today. May or may not get to that today, but that's another topic for another day, if not, right? But just that idea of thinking outside the box, I didn't realize that I was stepping outside the box because I was coming at it from a not legal perspective, which I think has kind of helped me get to where I am today, which is graduated from law school, went and worked with a small firm, gained some business planning experience, which has proved invaluable. But I wanted to focus more on the estate planning side. And I was going through trying to figure out, find a landing spot. I did not have the goal to start my own firm, at the time. In this context, I think is important, but also for my decision, but also anyone who might be listening saying, hey, there's not always an ideal time. Make it an ideal time. We were under contract to buy a house. We had twins that were turning 2. My wife was about 7 months pregnant. And then, and so I was not looking to start my own business. I had come from a salary position. I was looking for a salary position because I was like, I don't have the experience. I don't have the expertise to start my own firm and all of these other things. Cash flow was really important to me. But as I was meeting with other attorneys and kind of debriefing with my mentor, which I can never say enough about him specifically, nor that idea of mentorship, which I think we'll get to today. It just kind of hit home that the quote unquote normal stereotypical way for an attorney to interact with their clients just wasn't a good fit for me. I'm not going to go so far as to say it's problematic or falls short, even though I do have those feelings. But for me, it just didn't make sense to, for example, dive really, really deep with a couple for 2 or 3 months, talk about all their deepest concerns and goals and everything, and then like literally never talk to them again. That's just not how I'm wired. And so that idea of maintaining a relationship was kind of the genesis of maybe there's a different way of doing things. And that ended up leading to me taking that plunge to starting my own firm, because I wasn't confident enough that I'd be given the time, because there'd be a rainmaker attorney feeding me work, keeping me busy. And if I had these crazy ideas, would I be given the space and the time to actually figure out what that looked like? Or would I just be told no at every turn? Maybe not giving other attorneys enough credit. That was just a concern that I had at the time. But then I decided to go off and start my own practice, a month and 3 days after we closed on the house, and 13 days before we had our newborn, a month and 9 days after our twins turned 2. And that's, started my own practice. So, nothing going on at that time at all. And so, I had 2 people in my network who I could conceivably expect to receive referrals from. One of the craziest, harebrained, I would never do it again decisions of my entire life. Now that I know what it takes, right? And just to sum up the last, 6 years and change since then, 6 months, 1 day, and 13 days to be ultra precise.
Awesome.
May 3rd, 2015, right? Or May 11th, 2013, May 11th, 2016. There you go. I can't even get my date right. The Colorado Secretary of State helps me remember that when they send me my business renewal. There's been a lot of ups and downs, right? So the end of 2017, we were maybe 30 to 60 days away from me having to look at getting a part-time job to kind of supplement, maybe even, the dream dying and having to go find another job, right? So fortunately, kind of January of 2018, things started to pick up. And since 2018, it's just 50% growth in gross revenue or more every single year since then, honestly.
Wow. That's awesome.
Hired my surf staff member in February in 2020, yes, right before COVID. The last 6 months of the year, we were understaffed. I hired 2 new staff at the end of January of 2021,
Mm-hmm.
and a fourth staff member end of July of 2021. So we literally hired my first person in 2020, 3 people in 2021. Since then, I have been fully staffed for myself, and so now it's just asking that question: what's that next step for growth, right? And so, but it's just consolidating that. It's training. It's one of my staff is on maternity leave, so it's a good little test on the systems and processes that we put in place. How good are we at stepping in when someone is out for a 3-month period, stuff like that. So lots of ups and downs, smaller ups and downs since that big down at the end of 2017. But yeah, so that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Awesome. Well, I
Yep.
appreciate you sharing that story. And stories drive everything. They're the genesis of relationships and history, as you alluded to in your undergrad studies. So one thing that kind of dawns on me, hearing that story, is we talked about intentionality, and being in that position, putting myself in your shoes, about to have another child, 2 twins under 2, about to close on a house. A lot of people are wired to chase security in that situation, the short-term thinking of, I've got to bring money in the door, and all other ideals are not even acknowledged in the face of that type of threat. But you had it sounds like a broader vision, one, of how you wanted to serve clients, and 2, what you wanted that to look like, in terms of controlling your own destiny. And, that, sometimes you have to value that vision and that passion more than money itself. So I guess with that being said, another thing that we kind of batted around in this is, really not necessarily the end goal, but the longer term thinking that's the offshoot of those intentional goals, which is ideal lifestyle, and what does your business ownership and status as such, as opposed to being an employee, lead to ultimately, in terms of your mind, that dream beyond just client service.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways I'm still figuring that out, right? And so what that ideal lifestyle looks like. And to just take a slight step back, I mean, I totally agree with you that intentionality and stuff. For me, there's a little bit of serendipity there as well, of perfect timing, perfect people in the right place, right? Like,
Yep.
I met my mentor back in law school, and we still talk every single week. And he's been invaluable, being connected to other resources that gave me that confidence to go out and start on my own. My 3L year in law school. So we had our twins in my second year in law school.
Wow.
Yeah, I kind of jokingly say, like 3 of my 4 kids, timing wise, were poor professional decisions, but excellent personal decisions, right? But the connection is, kids provide plenty of motivation, right? Because they're literally, legally, practically dependents, right?
Yep.
So, but having a mentor, having kids, those celebrities who passed away that kind of at the right time, right? Not that it was timed just for me, but for me, it was serendipity. It was well timed. It was a conversation with another attorney who I don't remember how I got connected with him, but that conversation with him helped me have the confidence that I could go out and start my own practice. Because even if it's like, and then it was just like enough self-awareness for me to know that litigation wasn't a good fit, but also, that was an initial conversation, but also I'm only going to find so much fulfillment of diving deep into people and then never talking to them again, right? And so that was a little bit of serendipity, a little bit of intuition, even though it wasn't necessarily intentional. And I don't know that I realized what I was doing, right? Just exactly what you just said, right? Vision versus security. I don't know that I realized that. There was a lot of naivete about that decision making. It wasn't nearly as easy as I had told myself it was going to be. And I think there was a little bit of that involved. But there's a little bit of serendipity there too, and on top of the intentionality. Now going back to that with that ideal lifestyle, for me, I wouldn't say that I'm a workaholic. I'm a fulfillaholic. It's hard for me to sit down and do nothing, but it's not like I need to be working, 60 hours a day. I have the need to feel fulfilled, maybe 60 hours a week, but not working 60 hours a week, right? So ideal lifestyle, for example, we set a goal, my wife and I, that I'm home at 5 o'clock every day.
Excellent.
Right. I try, well, there have been times when I've had to work on Saturdays during kids' nap times. There's been times when I've had to work when kids had gone to bed, but 5 o'clock to kids going to bed is like sacred family time, right?
Excellent.
Try really, really hard to not invade that. And so it's been, I don't know, 3 years, maybe. So I'm going to say 2 to 4 years, probably around 3, where I haven't had to work on evenings unless a client literally could not work during the workday. Haven't worked on Saturdays. I'm home at 5 with a couple exceptions there, but 5:15, 5:30, but scheduled. Like it's on my calendar. Leave office at 4:30, right? I leave at the same time that my kids leave to school. So I see them off to school every day, which puts me in my first meeting of the day at 9 o'clock.
Yep.
So my work day is 9 to 4:30. That being said, if you look at my calendar, I work my tail off between 9 and 4:30, right? It's a miracle if I have more than an hour of scheduled office time to get work done. Now that is mitigated by me having staff, and that's a whole lot of intentionality, right? Staff and stuff like that. But I take the fourth Friday of every month off. Beginning in 2023, I'll probably be taking a second Friday off. And that's not because because I can. That's I need time for myself, and I can't look at myself in the mirror and saying, hey, I'm taking Saturday off because I'm making my wife's life harder, right?
Yeah.
And so that's a very intentional decision of I am sacrificing profitability to get some time to myself where I can de-stress, decompress, read a book, this and that and the other without compromising my wife's sanity, right? And it all comes down to value system, right? What are you value? And everyone's answer to that is going to be different. Some families don't feel the need to have that attorney home at 5 o'clock. They're more willing to make those sacrifices than we've been willing to. But that pattern for us has been set even from, twins was not expected, but we did make the decision to try to start having kids in law school, right? We have always, and this is us, we've always prioritized family first. And that's honestly one of the values of our firm, right? Is family first. And that applies to us, that applies to our staff, that applies to our clients. Family is always first. And again, maybe we didn't realize it at the time, but we've always made that decision of family being first, right? And so that's kind of that ideal lifestyle. And so that next question is, because this is kind of where we're going eventually, is not just my ideal lifestyle and how do we make it so that the firm still runs itself, still makes money when I go on vacation, shocking idea, but how do I help my staff be able to go on maternity leave or have a vacation where they can disconnect and things still run? How can I help my staff? And earlier you would call them stakeholders, right? Which I think is important because they're not shareholders, right? Legally, ethically, not attorneys can't own a law firm unless it's Arizona, Utah. And I think you had said Florida.
Yeah, Florida, I think is coming online too. Yeah.
Right. So not stakeholders in that traditional sense, but shareholders, stakeholders in that they are invested in the success of the business, right? whether they are partners, attorneys, receptionists, legal assistants, paralegals, right? How do they find a meaning? How do they make meaning in the work that they do rather than a pure focus on making money, right? How do I help them live their ideal lifestyle? How do I help them have a mature job, right? Where they can go on vacation, right? So I have some staff where I don't think one of my staff, and of course she's the one who I can bill out to clients and she's willing to work full time, but 3 of my other staff, they literally don't want to work full time, right? Because that's part of their ideal lifestyle.
Yeah.
And so I don't make them work full time, right?
Yep.
Because that would, because I'm just asking for brain drain and talent attrition.
Joy. Okay. Yeah.
Talent attrition, right?
Yep.
Because if I'm saying, no, you have to work 40 hours a week, and it was like, well, I only want to work 30, then they're not going to stick around.
Yep.
Right. And so it's just that flexibility of treating, and you kind of touched on it, right? Client focused, stakeholder focused for me. I know I have the loyalty of my staff.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean they'll never leave, right? But they know that I value them just as much as I value myself, right? There's not a hierarchy of, attorney. It's like from Suits, right? I normally like the TV show, right? Where I've watched clips of it. I don't know that I've watched the show, but one of the biggest things that ever bugged me about Suits, because it's so antithetical to what I have learned as an attorney, as a business owner, all those different things, is when Harvey would talk to his assistant. I can't remember her name, right? Donna.
Yep.
Right. Where he was like, I'm here, you're here. I tell you what to do your job. I was like, oh, I just want to shoot you in the face, Harvey, because that's so awful. It is awful. Because he thinks that, but really, like, Donna's in charge, if we're being
honest. Yeah.
And so, but he's just like pulling rank. And that is such an awful way to go about things.
Well, it's a great example because she actually, I think in later seasons, finagles her way into somehow being a firm owner. So that goes back to our stakeholder point. So
another way to commit malpractice every single episode. But she's the CFO or like she's a CFO, right? But yeah, totally, right? And so she had that potential. And he gave her space for it, but also at the same time demeaned her at the same time, right? So how can we get the one without the other?
Yeah.
Across the full spectrum of the law firm experience. Right?
Yep. Yeah. And there's a ton we can get into there. Especially in terms of leadership within the firm itself, when you're in a supervisory attorney capacity, but that's a little bit outside of the scope of today's discussion. But I think it kind of, it relates to the relationship between more experienced attorneys and less experienced attorneys. And I know you're kind of looking at how does that look for you in the future when you have attorneys in-house and you're not just the person where the buck stops. But one thing that kind of dawns on me as we look at your evolution into business owner is the importance you've placed on relationships and outside perspectives, and that you were very intentional about going out to the market and actually not sitting at your desk and assuming, oh, I've got to live in this for the rest of my life, and talking to other attorneys who also were, I guess, emotionally mature enough to be able to support you and be able to say, yeah, you can do this on your own. We have confidence in you. And that was kind of almost the rocket, it seems, based on your story that helped you say, okay, this is something I might not have thought of before, might have just been in my subconscious, but maybe this can be a reality. Let's go see what happens. So I guess maybe speak to that role of mentorship, how that's helped you in starting your firm and surviving through 6 years, not just surviving, but thriving, and kind of how you see that as some, not necessarily something missing, but maybe a gap that could be filled in the attorney market for practice.
Yeah, I think for me, there's a positive and negative experience for me from a mentorship perspective. And what I mean by that is the positive side. I have been blessed with amazing mentors. Um,
Excellent.
they all kind of fill different roles,
Mm-hmm.
which is great. It's fine. I mean, if anything, that's great, right?
Yep.
It's hard to find a one size fits all mentor, and any good mentor would tell you that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure that when I think about mentors and how they benefited me, I think two main ways. I don't know that my firm would still exist without mentors.
Mm-hmm.
And if it still did exist, I probably would have committed malpractice by now.
Mm.
Like, to be honest, like I'm
Yeah.
not smart enough to, knowing my backstory, and some of it we've touched on, and some of it
Mm-hmm.
we don't have all day. And I'm
Yep.
not that interesting. There is no way that on my own I would have not committed malpractice. Like, I feel very comfortable saying that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not smart enough. I didn't have enough experience. More emphasis on the lack of experience, right?
Mm.
There's no way I would not have committed malpractice.
Yep.
Without a mentor. I don't know if I would have been caught in it or whatever, but there's
Mm-hmm.
no way that I would not have committed malpractice if I didn't have a mentor, right?
Yep.
And then all the positive that comes from that, right? It's so fulfilling / stroking my ego when I can talk to my mentor, who's been my mentor for probably closing on a decade, because he was my mentor even before I graduated from law school.
Excellent.
Being able to share my successes, and it means so much for me
Mm-hmm.
when he says, I am so proud of the successes that you've been able to make. And seeing, because he can better appreciate, one, because he's not me, and two, because he's been I mean, he recently retired, but he was closing in on 50 years of law practice.
Wow.
Where you can be able to see where you were and where you are now. Like, that just has so much gravitas for me.
Mm-hmm.
For him to say that, right?
Yeah.
Just very encouraging, very positive, very constructive, more than willing to answer questions, legal, personal, business side, because he used to be a business owner. He got tired of the administrative. He joined another firm, right? So he sees both sides of all that stuff.
Yeah.
And so very, very positive, abundant mindset. He knew he wasn't threatened by me. He didn't feel threatened by me, and just more than open, right?
Yep.
I mean, there have been other newer mentors who fulfill not quite as an integral role, but more complementary, but still just as important from that perspective. So that's this positive side of that. The negative is because of my experience, I never had an in-house mentor.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense, right?
Yep.
I never had a partner or a senior associate or someone who I could literally walk down the hall and knock on the door and say, hey, I have a quick question, right? I've had mentors who kind of sort of fill that role, but it's irreplaceable to have that type of within the same law firm mentorship.
Yeah.
Right. It's completely irreplaceable, where you're working on the same client. It's easier to ask those questions, right? It truly is irreplaceable. And so, you and I kind of talked about beforehand of this idea of mentorship. I would encourage everyone to get an outside of the law firm mentor, at least one, preferably more than that.
Yep.
The other thought is the importance of the firm / partners to make it easier from the outside looking in to get an in-house mentor. And what I mean by that is, I think a couple thoughts there. One is the attorneys that I've talked with who are part of a larger firm who have become successful, and you can define successful however you want to. Some of these, they became a partner.
Yep.
So the firm found them to be successful. They talked about how important it was for them to have gotten noticed. And that may or may not be a direct quote, but that's a pretty close paraphrase.
Yeah.
Which to me says a couple different things. One, noticed by someone who is willing to be a mentor and to take interest in this young attorney's journey.
Mm-hmm.
But that plus another experience of a really good attorney friend of mine where very gifted, excellent attorney. And I was like, how did you get so good at XYZ, right? The topic doesn't matter so much, right? We were talking about something specific.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, well, one, you get the experience by working on the client work that a partner has brought in, but two, you have to make it work.
Mm-hmm.
You have to make the time to become an expert at X, Y, and Z.
Yep.
And I kind of mentioned to you before, but that's kind of where my head like figuratively hit the table and just banged itself up against that table.
Yep.
Where it's like, is there not some systematized way to create that technical expertise, right? It's kind of a sink or swim type of an approach, right? And that's what I would say is that firms, I think it behooves the law firm more than maybe they realize to create a systematized way to pair up associates on whatever level, right? Well, I'm thinking this is more like a brand new associate, but really this applies to anybody, if we're being honest, right? Even junior partners could use some good mentorship on what it means to be a partner. So let's say anybody, right? Anybody within a law firm, a systematized way to get an in-house mentor, right? Maybe that's just something as simple as go out and every new associate or every whomever, where you get lunch with every single potential mentor within the firm. A lunch every single day or whatever, and you get time to meet with those other potential mentors, right? Maybe it's just something as simple as that, or it can be even more diving deep in where the potential mentors say, they fill out some type of form, right? And I think the Colorado Bar Association has something like this, where it's like the mentor says, and the mentees fill out this form of, this is my skill set, this is what I'm looking for out of this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you have some central authority mixing and matching, right?
Yep.
And you can accept any type of process in all of that, but some type of system, one for mentoring, but two, education, creating training and stuff like that. I realize I'm broadening your question a little bit.
No, you're good.
But creating those type of systems, and I think what that does is something that is kind of thought in my mind that I've thought before and is a little bit of a soapbox, which is the firm proving to the attorneys that the firm is good enough. Right. And I know that this is a big thing you care about, is just this idea of this hierarchy, right? This top down, to quote Matilda, right? I'm big, you're small, I'm smart, you're dumb, I'm right, you're wrong type of thing. And there needs to be some type of hierarchy there, right? I don't think any associate straight out of law school would be saying, hey, I want to be the managing partner. Right? There's some of that needs to be there. But so many times these firms say, being a junior associate is a rite of passage. You need to prove that you're good enough for us.
Yep.
Right. And in the meantime, we're going to treat you like dirt. I'm over exaggerating because I'm sure not every firm is like this, but I'm going to the extreme point, right?
Well, that's the theme. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. But that idea of the firm also taking it upon themselves and having that mentality of, we need to show that we're good enough for you, associate, that this is a place where you want to stay, you want to hitch your wagon, right? Because you find meaning here, because of the culture that we have here, because of the engagement that we encourage you to give to us, because you have become a shareholder, you have bought into the success of the business beyond the massive pay raise that you're going to get when you become a partner.
Yeah.
Right. And in the meantime, you just got to put in those 60, 80-hour weeks to prove that you're good enough for us. Right. And And that can be manifested among many other different things, of having some type of systematized mentorship program that makes it easy for every single associate to have at least one mentor,
Yeah.
right? Or and they're all, and I think the best law firms are like that, where you can, whether that's like like a clerkship during law school, where
Mhm.
you can go and practice among the other several practice groups, if it's a full service law firm,
Yep.
you kind of get some like real life experience to get an idea of what type of practice they might be interested in doing, right?
Mhm.
So mentorship, survey of the firm. Here's a systematized way to get training and become technically gifted, right?
Yep.
Um, and be able to say, hey, this is what I'm really interested in. I have these general skills. Here's a specialty,
Mhm.
right, that I want to be really interested in, that would provide additional value to myself, to clients, to the firm, and do it in a positive, constructive way, right?
Yeah. That sounds great. Yeah, it kind of dawns on me as we're talking through that. You mentioned hierarchy and Harvey Specter, I'm up here, you're down here. But ironically, he mentored Mike Ross and they eventually closed that gap.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
Harvey ended up going to bat for him and abandoning that mindset. But it kind of, I guess we don't have to address this topic today. I think this is a good offshoot, but uh, in the mentorship relationship, or even before seeking it, as you're in that firm environment, that system where maybe you want it but don't have it, there's a lot of limiting beliefs that attorneys have. And I think kind of the theme I mentioned is that a law firm itself is a system, and it has its own anxieties and everything that flow within it. And you've done a good job within your firm, it seems, kind of creating a system that's friendly and open to mentorship, and one that creates, I guess, boundaries too, where people are on their opposite side of the net, and you're not operating as one. And I only bring that up to say, usually the hierarchy is sometimes imagined by attorneys who want to mentor, want to take that next step in their career, want to dare to dream, but they're often held back by this belief that there is a hypothetical they out there that's holding them back, who's up here and is going to criticize them, or whatever the case might be. And I'm curious, to close the loop, you'd mentioned the negatives of mentorship, and if you're comfortable sharing, what were some of those you saw as you went through that process?
Yeah. Well, for me, the biggest negative was the absence of a mentor, actually,
Hmm.
right? I probably wasn't very
Okay.
clear with that. So for me, that's probably the biggest negative. For me, that is probably the thing that I have missed the most by being a solopreneur,
Hmm.
being a solo practitioner attorney. I've missed an in-house associate, an in-house mentor,
Yeah.
probably more than anything else,
Hmm.
right? Um, Beyond that, um, I think availability, right? Um, Attorneys are super busy, right?
Yeah.
Even the ones with the good internal law firm dynamic, they're all busy. Uh,
Hmm.
the stressors and pressures that are on attorneys from the
Hmm.
outside looking in, the normal person doesn't necessarily see, right? They see the dark wood desk, they see the fancy suits, they see
Hmm.
the arrogance, right? It's like, oh, you've got it easy. They don't necessarily see the pressures, the time commitment,
Yep.
the go. Attorneys are some of the highest in substance abuse and mental health problems. Like,
Hmm.
it's right up there. If it's not number one, it's like top two or three.
Yeah.
And so it's availability. Sometimes some of my mentors are not as easy to um, corner
Yep.
as I would like, right? Because I'm selfish and I want to benefit
Hmm.
from it. Um, and so I think it's that when you get a mentor, I wouldn't say that this is a negative, but maybe a caution, because I could see in some of my mentor relationships it could have been a negative, of making sure that there's a good personality fit.
Yeah, true.
But at the same time, you need to give your mentor space to make you feel uncomfortable. One mentor specifically, he probably makes me more uncomfortable than my other mentors, meaning he's willing to tell me when I'm falling short.
Yeah.
Right. Not a pleasant conversation all the time, but you have to have somebody who can give you a reality check.
I have a feeling I know who you're talking about, but we
which is fine.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard. It is hard in the moment, but if they're doing it from a place of love and caring, that is different than someone who says literally exactly the same thing, but they do it from a position of hierarchy, right?
Yeah.
You're dumb, you're stupid, you should know better. Very different, right? And I think all of us have experienced that, right?
Or pay your dues, wait your turn. Yeah.
Whatever, right? You can have two different people who literally say exactly the same thing, but the place that they're coming from makes all the difference in the world, right?
Yep.
And so it could be a negative if I allowed it to be. And in the moment, I'm like, burr, 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 right? I don't want to hear this. It sucks. That gives me that sinking feeling in my stomach, right? But the next day, it's like, yeah, he's probably right.
Yeah.
And I have to step up my game. I need to make time to solve this issue that he's identified. Right? And so, so there's that. I think maybe another suggestion, and I'm not following this suggestion, I haven't necessarily thought about it, is having some diversity in your mentors as well. Right. And that's a problem in our space of estate planning, right? It tends to be overly populated by white men.
Yep.
And all of my mentors are white men. It probably wouldn't do me a whole lot of hurt to put in some effort to find some type of diversity. Now, there are some other estate planning attorneys that I know who don't fulfill that white male role, if you will, or whatever space. But those are probably really good relationships for me to be developing, because it's that diversity of opinion that as a white male I need, right? Just like a white female needs perspective from someone else, or a minority attorney, right? We all benefit from different perspectives. And so that would be something else that I would suggest that people are looking for mentors. Try to have some diversity. But it could be anything. It's not just demographic. It could be experience diversity, right? Just having people from different perspectives, right? Are they a partner in a firm? Are they another associate? Are they a solo practitioner? Is it demographic? What about age, right? I mean, you know, Griffin, and you and I, using us as an example, not that we're in a mentor, we're more of a peer relationship. You have been an attorney, like I for a lot longer than I have, even though you're not much older than I am. Yeah. That's because you went to law school.
I may not act like one every day, but
that's an offline conversation. But you went to law school at a much younger age than I did, right? And so there's value there, right? And so trying to mix and match and recognize that there's a lot of different perspectives that can be gained from different mentors in different situations. It's not just demographic diversity, even though I think that's important. There are other types of big firm, small firm, solopreneur. There's a lot of different ways in which you can find diversity, and that'll just further and broaden your vision and enrich your perspective and your experience, and just better help an attorney find that ideal lifestyle, right? As they get introduced to other people's life experiences.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your time today. I guess closing the loop on our theme of mentorship, I'm a big believer in scaling yourself and leaving a legacy. And in this seat right now, in the discussion we're having, we are essentially mentors to the audience. We may not have the capacity to serve one-on-one, but we can scale ourselves in this video to do so. But you alluded to a certain mentor in particular, or so even multiple mentors who give you that kick in the seat when you need it. So if you had to leave our audience with that kick in the seat, what's on your mind? What would that
Oh
be?
man, I was not expecting that question. Man, that's a really good question. I think for me, it's be self-aware enough to know that you bring value to the table, but be humble enough to recognize that everybody else brings value to the table as well. It's not just your partners, your partner that has that ability to hire and fire you, who brings value, but the receptionist, the legal assistant, the paralegal, your clients, right? There is something to learn from everybody, and there is something unique that you have that can be used to teach everybody, whether explicitly through words or just how you carry yourself, how you live your life, and their ability to perceive what you bring, right? Valuing yourself and valuing other people can do wonders for your self-confidence, as well as your how you interact with other people in the world. And as you seek to integrate what you learn from other people and the value that other people bring to the table, it'll just make you that much more of a better person, which has obviously a lot of personal positive impact, but it also actually brings a lot of professional impact as well. And you'll find more satisfaction. You'll bring more to the table as a person, as an individual in your personal life, as well as your professional life. It's so easy professionally for things to be diluted, or not diluted, but oversimplified to a dollar sign. There's some value to that. There's obviously plenty of limitations to that as well. Increasing your value by understanding your value and appreciating other people's value and seeking to incorporate that in your life, and keeping those other people in your life because you appreciate that value, will aid you to find professional meaning, not just money. So,
well, that's given me a kick in the seat, so I appreciate that. Well, thank you so much, Brandon. Where can our audience find you?
Yeah, so 2 ways. My website, Rains, RAINS. There's no E, RAINS-law.com, or Brandon, normal spelling, at Rains-law.com. So
Okay.
2 best ways to do it.
All right. Well, I really appreciate your time today and your insight on mentorship. And I think we've derived about 10 different themes out of this discussion that could warrant their own follow-up. So I'll look forward to talking to you again on some other themes that came up here. One that I want to kind of close the loop with that you mentioned at the end is just teaching, and how important that is as a tool within mentorship, and even as a self-development tool on the technical and even self-aware emotional side. But that aside, really appreciate your time today. And everyone, I encourage you to connect with Brandon, seek him out, because he's a great resource and one of the few innovators in the estate planning space, I think, who's doing things right. So thank you so much, Brandon, and I'll look forward to keeping track of your progress as you go along.
Thanks, appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, Griffin.
That was Brandon Rains. What really resonated with me in this interview is the importance of framing not just effort and productivity in terms of billable hours and work and discipline, but framing it from the perspective of fulfillment and making sure that that goal of fulfillment trickles down to your employees and staff as well. I also took away the importance of a mentor both within and outside your firm, not just from a technical standpoint, but also from a social and emotional standpoint as well. If you or someone you know would like to contribute to this goal of preserving institutional knowledge for the estate planning community, you can email me at griffin.bridgers@gmail.com. If you enjoyed this interview and you'd like to receive the latest updates on estate planning content and education, please like and subscribe to this YouTube channel. If you prefer the written word, you can also read or contribute to my newsletter at griffinbridgers.substack.com. Thank you again, and I look forward to seeing you in my future content.